Inside the $5 million dream. See Gil and Kelly Jo Bates' new family estate. A quiet morning in Rocky Top turned unexpectedly heavy for the Bates family, as Gil Bates stepped outside his front door with a kind of silence that did not belong to him. The familiar smell of pine trees and the peaceful breeze failed to calm the weight on his chest. For years, their old family home had held everything. Tiny footsteps, laughter echoing through hallways, birthdays, late-night talks, endless prayers, and the rhythm of a family that grew faster than the house could handle. But today the walls felt smaller than ever. Friends close to the family had noticed the slow change. With more children married, more grandchildren arriving, and gatherings becoming larger every season, the Bates home had turned into a place overflowing with love but short on space. Even the family dinners, once lively and simple, had begun to feel like a puzzle no one could arrange on the same table anymore. Inside the house, Kelly Jo moved quietly from one corner to another. Her hands worked automatically, preparing breakfast, fixing small tasks, setting things in order the way she always did. But her heart sensed a shift. Gil had been restless for weeks, speaking less, thinking more, holding pieces of concerns he didn't know how to express. The first sign came hours later, when Gil finally admitted something he had been avoiding. The home that raised 19 children, hosted countless memories, and survived storms both literal and emotional, was reaching its limit. It wasn't just about space. It was about the future they wanted for their ever-growing family. And that future unexpectedly revealed itself on a quiet road just outside Rocky Top. The property that caught Gil's attention had already been the talk of the town. A $5 million estate, towering glass walls, open fields, breathtaking mountain views, and a house so large it seemed to breathe differently. Some said it was too modern for the simplicity of the Bates lifestyle. Others whispered that it was the kind of place people only dream about. Yet when Gil stood before it, he didn't feel excitement. He felt fear. A deep, trembling uncertainty that spread through his whole body. For a man who built his life on faith and simplicity, the magnitude of the house felt overwhelming. The quiet surroundings made the structure appear even grander, as if the mountains themselves were silently asking whether he belonged there. Moments later, Kelly arrived. Her presence softened everything. She walked alongside him, taking in the sweeping architecture and the sunlit windows that stretched toward the sky. The beauty of the place didn't intimidate her. It stirred something gentle in her heart. There was no dramatic gasp, no rushing excitement, only a steady gaze filled with memory and possibility. Gil's voice broke when he confessed how impossible it all felt. The price, the scale, the sheer audacity of even imagining their family living in a place like this. But Kelly's response came quietly, carrying a strength that only years of motherhood, sacrifice, and faith could create. She reminded him of every challenge they had faced, every time they had stepped into the unknown, every moment when fear had given way to something greater. Her words didn't promise anything. They didn't erase the worry, but they made room for hope, softly, carefully, like opening a window to let sunlight in. Standing together on that hill, the couple who had once started life in a tiny home, with more dreams than money, found themselves staring at something that seemed far bigger than their reality. Yet something about it felt strangely fitting. Not because of its luxury, not because of its price, but because it offered space. Space for the family that never stopped growing, never stopped loving, never stopped multiplying in the most beautiful ways. By the time evening settled over the mountains, the air around the estate felt different. Not lighter, not easier, just filled with possibility. And as Gil and Kelly stood side by side, watching the last line of sunlight rest across the roof of the massive home, a quiet understanding passed between them, one that didn't need words. Something was shifting, something was calling, something neither of them had expected, yet neither of them could walk away from. In the days that followed, the quiet decision to visit the $5 million estate began to ripple silently through the Bates household. Gil didn't speak much about it, yet his silence was louder than any announcement. Kelly noticed how often he paused in the middle of tasks, how frequently he stepped outside just to breathe, how his eyes kept drifting toward the distant hills as though searching for an answer hidden somewhere in the landscape. Nothing had been finalized, nothing had even been discussed properly, yet something inside their home felt unsettled. It was as if the old house itself sensed the possibility of change. Gil spent evenings walking through the hallways, running his fingers along the edges of door frames. He stopped longer than usual at the spots where children once taped drawings, or where Kelly had handwritten scriptures on sticky notes to comfort him during difficult seasons. He remembered every scrape on the wall, every dent on the floor, every place where life had left a mark. The house was aging, but it held their entire story. Meanwhile, the possibility of a new home stood like an unspoken question between Gil and Kelly. Neither wanted to rush. Both were afraid of dreaming too big. Yet the seed had been planted, and it was slowly growing roots in their thoughts. The turning point came one afternoon when the family gathered for a casual lunch. There were too many people for the small dining room, so chairs were pulled from every corner of the house, and even then, several grandchildren sat on the floor with paper plates balanced on their knees. The noise was joyful, chaotic, and warm, yet overwhelmingly cramped. Gil watched as Kelly tried to squeeze between chairs to serve food, her apron brushing against elbows, plates clattering, someone apologizing, kids giggling, a baby crying loudly over the sound of dozens of voices. Despite the laughter, something inside him tightened. The room felt like it had shrunk since the last gathering. Later that evening, when the crowd had thinned and the house grew quiet again, Gil sat alone in the living room. The lights were dim, the children gone, the space echoing with the absence of noise. The silence pressed against him in a way he had not expected. For the first time, he admitted to himself. The house that had once fit them perfectly now felt too small for the life they had built. Kelly found him there, sitting with his elbows on his knees, staring at a stack of old family photographs. She sat beside him without saying a word, letting the silence settle between them. After a while, she placed her hand gently over his. Gil finally whispered, "I don't want the family to ever feel divided. I don't want gatherings to feel like a burden." His voice broke slightly. "I just want them to have a place to come home to." Kelly's eyes filled, but she kept her voice steady. "A bigger home won't erase our memories. It will only give us room to make more." Her words lingered in the air, soft and powerful. For the first time, the idea of the new estate didn't feel extravagant. It felt necessary. News of the couple's private visit to the property began to circulate among family members in gentle whispers. Each child reacted differently. Some with excitement, some with disbelief, some with cautious hope. The idea of such a massive home was overwhelming. Yet the thought of gathering comfortably under one roof again stirred something deeply emotional. On a quiet morning, Gil and Kelly returned to the property for a second visit. The sun rose slowly behind them, casting golden light across the massive structure. The estate looked even more beautiful than before. Quiet, open, ready. They walked the grounds hand in hand. No words were spoken, but the gravity of the moment settled heavily between them. The sound of rustling leaves filled the empty space, the only witness to their unspoken thoughts. Gil paused in front of the door. He imagined family dinners without squeezing into corners, children running freely without bumping into furniture, grandchildren filling the rooms with life and laughter. He imagined birthdays, holidays, reunions, quiet afternoons, moments that needed space to breathe. For the first time, he didn't see luxury. He saw possibility. He saw legacy. He saw the future of a family that had never stopped expanding with love. Kelly stood quietly beside him, her eyes soft yet determined. Her presence offered the courage he needed. The question now was no longer whether the house was too big. The question was whether they were brave enough to step into a new chapter that felt unfamiliar, intimidating, but undeniably hopeful. By the time they left the property that day, the air around them felt heavier than before, not with fear, but with a decision slowly taking shape. Something had shifted. A path had opened just a little wider. And the story of the Bates family was quietly preparing for a change that none of them had expected, yet all of them were beginning to feel in their hearts. The story of Gil and Kelly Jo entered a heavier, more complicated chapter as the pressure surrounding their $5 million home began to reshape the atmosphere around them. The early excitement that once filled their days slowly faded, replaced by a kind of quiet uneasiness they didn't speak out loud but could feel in the air, like a weight neither of them wanted to acknowledge, yet both carried every moment. Friends, relatives, and even distant acquaintances kept sending messages, some congratulating, some questioning, and some expressing concern. Gil tried to stay calm, insisting that everything was under control, But inside he was wrestling with numbers, responsibilities, and timelines that refused to leave his mind. Every night, he sat longer than usual at the dinner table after everyone left, staring at papers he didn't want the kids to worry about. He tried to smile when any of them walked by, but the tension behind his eyes always lingered. Kelly Jo, on the other hand, felt the emotional side of the whole situation more deeply than anyone around her realized. She walked through their current home, touching the walls, looking at the rooms where her babies had grown, recalling the countless memories that made the house more than just a place to live. She knew they needed an upgrade. She knew they wanted a better space for their large family. But the reality of what they were stepping into scared her in a way she didn't want to admit. She carried the fear quietly, speaking softly, moving gently, hoping peace would eventually follow them. But the closer they got to finalizing the deal, the more the pressure seemed to close in. The $5 million figure kept echoing in their minds, not as excitement anymore, but as an enormous responsibility. It was the kind of decision that could change the course of their family's future, for better or worse. And deep inside, both Gil and Kelly felt the same unspoken question rising. Are we doing the right thing? The children, though busy with their own lives, could sense the difference. Conversations felt shorter. Smiles seemed thinner. Laughter didn't float around the house quite the same way it used to. Everyone felt something shifting, but no one dared to speak about it directly. Gil and Kelly found themselves holding on to each other more often during quiet moments. Short hugs, long sighs, silent prayers. They weren't scared of hard work. They had lived their whole lives through challenges, but this time felt different. This wasn't just another step. It was a leap into uncertainty. And as the final day approached, the emotional pressure reached a point where both of them were forced to face their deepest feelings. The home they wanted promised comfort, space, and a new beginning, but the path toward it felt heavier, more overwhelming, and more emotional than anything they had anticipated. It wasn't just about a house anymore. It was about their family, their legacy, and the fear of making a decision that might change everything forever. As the days moved closer to the final decision, Gil and Kelly Jo found themselves caught between the life they had built and the life they were reaching for. The paperwork, the meetings, the financial details, everything felt endless, as if each new step pulled another layer of peace away from them. Gil tried to stay strong, but the burden pressed against him from every direction. People often saw him as the steady one, the father who always knew what to do, the man who held the family together with confidence and conviction. But behind closed doors, he found himself fighting thoughts he had never admitted to anyone. He questioned whether he had allowed ambition to mix with responsibility. He worried if he was leading his family into something too big, too risky, too heavy to handle. Sometimes he would walk outside late at night, staring at the sky as if looking for some kind of answer. The cool air helped him breathe, but it couldn't quiet the storm inside. He wanted the best for Kelly Jo and the children, but he feared the cost. Not in dollars, but in what it might take from their peace, their stability, their unity. Kelly Jo felt the emotional weight even more profoundly. She tried to smile in front of the kids, to cook, to clean, to keep the home warm. But every corner she touched whispered memories back to her. She remembered the nights they stayed up rocking a newborn to sleep, the mornings filled with breakfast chatter, the birthday balloons taped to the walls. Moving into a new home meant letting go of the place that held the beginnings of every chapter they cherished. And the thought of stepping into a house worth $5 million, a place so different, so enormous, made her heart tighten. It wasn't the price alone. It was the fear of losing simplicity, of losing the gentle rhythm of life they had always lived with. There were moments when Kelly would sit quietly in their room, folding laundry but stopping halfway, her thoughts drifting into a maze of questions. She wondered if the new home would truly make them happier, or if it would pull them into a world they weren't ready for. She prayed quietly, her voice trembling, asking for clarity, for peace, for a sign that they weren't walking blindly. Meanwhile, the children noticed more than their parents realized. They didn't say much, but the atmosphere in the house changed. Conversations became softer, steps in the hallway slower. Even the younger ones played with a quieter energy, sensing a tension they didn't understand. Every family dinner felt different now. There was a kind of silence around the table that didn't come from lack of words, but from the weight of unspoken fears. Everyone tried to act normal, but deep inside they all felt something shifting. something big enough to touch every part of their lives. As the final documents arrived, Gil and Kelly sat together at the kitchen table. Papers spread around them, pens set neatly to the side. The room felt colder, heavier. They didn't talk at first. They just stared at the pages, knowing that signing them would change everything. Gil's hand rested on the table, trembling slightly. Kelly reached over, placing her hand on his, her touch soft but filled with unspoken emotion. They shared a long, silent moment. A moment that held years of memories, years of struggles, and years of love. They weren't scared of moving forward. They were scared of moving wrong. And as the minutes passed, the weight of the $5 million decision settled into their hearts like a truth they couldn't escape. Their dream home stood waiting for them. But the emotional storm surrounding it grew stronger than ever. The tension around the decision reached its peak on a quiet evening when the house felt unusually still. Gil and Kelly Jo moved through the room slowly, almost as if they were walking through memories instead of walls and carpets. Every step reminded them of the life they had built, and the fear of what might happen if the next step forward didn't go as planned. Gil spent most of the evening alone in the living room, the soft glow of a single lamp falling across his face. A stack of documents rested beside him, untouched for hours. He wasn't avoiding them. He was trying to gather the strength to face what they meant. He kept thinking about the weight of leading a family this big, about the trust his children placed in him, and the faith Kelly had always shown in his decisions. He had never been afraid of responsibility, but this time it didn't feel like responsibility. It felt like a cliff edge. His thoughts drifted to the children, each living their own lives with their own struggles and joys. He wondered if the new house would truly make things better for them, or if he was simply trying to chase a vision that looked beautiful on paper but carried a price deeper than money. Late into the night, he whispered to himself, not as a leader, not as a father, but simply as a man carrying a burden. I just want to do right by them. Upstairs, Kelly Jo sat on their bed with a folded blanket pressed against her chest. She wasn't crying, but her eyes shimmered with the weight of silent worry. The thought of leaving behind decades of memories was almost unbearable. This home wasn't perfect, but it held their life, the laughter of children, the footsteps of toddlers, the echoes of celebrations, the warmth of holidays, and the comfort of ordinary days. Moving into a $5 million home sounded glamorous to the world, but to Kelly, it felt like stepping into a place too large, too polished, too unfamiliar. She wondered if the new space would feel cold, if the natural closeness of their family would change in a house so big it could swallow noise and hide emotions. She feared losing the simple moments that made their family feel human, grounded, connected. As the night deepened, the weight of the decision pushed its way into their hearts more heavily than ever. For the first time in weeks, they both found themselves awake at the same moment, unable to sleep. Kelly walked downstairs quietly, finding Gil still sitting in the dim light. He looked up as she entered, the exhaustion in his eyes softened only by the presence of the woman he'd shared his whole life with. They didn't speak at first. Kelly sat beside him, their shoulders touching, the silence between them filled with everything they hadn't been able to say. Slowly, Gil reached out and took her hand, their fingers interlocking tightly, not out of routine but out of need. Kelly leaned her head against his shoulder, and in a trembling voice, she finally whispered the question that had been trapped in her heart for weeks. Are we losing ourselves trying to reach something that might not be meant for us? The words didn't break him, they freed him. Gil closed his eyes, realizing that he had been holding on to strength he didn't have, pretending he wasn't scared, pretending he could carry everything alone. And for the first time, he let the truth come out in a cracked, emotional voice. I don't know, Kelly. I really don't know. In that moment, something shifted between them. Not fear, not doubt, but honesty. The kind of honesty that comes only when a family stands at a crossroads, unsure of the road ahead. Kelly's eyes filled with tears, not because the decision was too big, but because the thought of making the wrong one felt unbearable. She clutched his hand tighter, realizing that the house wasn't the real weight. The real weight was the fear of what it might do to their peace, their unity, their family. The night stretched on as they sat together, drawing comfort from the closeness they feared losing. No one else in the house knew the emotional storm happening downstairs, the quiet breaking of two hearts trying to make a choice that felt impossibly heavy. The papers were still on the table, the pens still untouched, the dreams still waiting, But the fear was louder now, louder than excitement, louder than ambition, louder than the voices around them. And as the night faded into early morning, one truth settled into both of their hearts. Sometimes the greatest decisions are not about what a family gains but what it might lose. Dawn arrived slowly, painting a pale light across the walls of a home that had held their entire world for so many years. Gil and Kelly Jo were still sitting together, hands intertwined, their hearts exhausted from the weight of the night. They hadn't slept, but neither of them cared. Some nights weren't meant for sleeping. Some nights existed only to break you open and show you what truly matters. The silence of early morning wrapped around them like a fragile blanket. The house was still, the children still sleeping, unaware of the emotional storm their parents had weathered through the darkness. Gil glanced at the documents lying on the table, the signatures missing, the decision waiting. It felt like those papers were staring back at him, questioning him, pressuring him, reminding him of everything that could go wrong. He let out a long breath, one that carried weeks of fear and responsibility. Kelly watched him, her eyes soft but filled with emotion. She had always believed he was the strongest man she knew, but seeing him this vulnerable reminded her that even strength has limits, and even strong hearts break quietly. Slowly, Kelly reached out and placed her hand on the documents, not to sign them, not to move them, but simply to acknowledge the truth. These papers had taken too much from them already. She whispered softly, her voice trembling, "Gil, if you're not at peace, we shouldn't force ourselves into something that takes our peace away." Those words struck him deeper than anything else. Peace. A simple word, yet the most important one they had slowly been losing. He looked at Kelly, the girl he had married, the mother of his children, the soul of their home. Everything they had built together came from love, sacrifice, and unity. And none of it had ever depended on a house, no matter how beautiful or expensive. Gil's eyes welled, the emotion he had held inside for so long finally breaking the surface. He covered his face with both hands, whispering a quiet confession he had been too afraid to speak. "I'm scared, Kelly. I'm scared of choosing wrong. I'm scared of leading us somewhere we'll regret." Kelly leaned closer, wrapping her arms around him, holding him the way she did in the earliest days of their marriage, tightly, protectively, with a love that didn't need words. Her voice cracked as she answered, "Then we choose what keeps us together, not what impresses the world." For a long moment they stayed like that, two hearts holding onto each other in the soft, golden morning light, realizing that the real decision wasn't about a house at all. It was about their family, their history, their future, and the priceless peace they had been losing piece by piece. As the first sounds of the children waking began echoing faintly from upstairs, Gil and Kelly made their choice without saying anything more. Gil stood slowly, picked up the unsigned documents, and pressed them against his chest. Kelly rose beside him, placing her hand over his. A silent unity in a moment that would shape the rest of their lives. Then, without hesitation, without regret, Gil walked to the drawer, opened it, and placed the documents inside. Not torn, not destroyed, simply put away. A reminder that they had walked close to a decision that could have changed everything, but chose love over pressure, peace over pride, and family over fear. Kelly felt tears roll down her cheeks, but they were different now. Softer, lighter. Tears that came from relief, not pain. She whispered, more to herself than to him, "We didn't lose anything. We just saved what mattered most." Gil wrapped his arm around her shoulders as the morning sun finally filled the room, warming the space that had witnessed their hardest night. And for the first time in many weeks, they both felt something return to them, something they had nearly forgotten. A sense of calm, a sense of home, a sense of being exactly where they were meant to be. As the children came downstairs, unaware of the emotional battle their parents had fought, the house once again filled with voices, footsteps, and the familiar softness of ordinary life. The $5 million dream home was still out there, beautiful, grand, untouched. But the home they already had, the home filled with memories, laughter, struggles, healing, and countless miracles, that was the place their hearts chose. And sometimes the most emotional ending isn't when a dream is reached. It's when a family realizes the dream they were chasing was already theirs.